Hi, I'm Toni Williams, and this is Brooklyn Savvy.
Hi, I'm Toni Williams, and welcome to Brooklyn Savvy. And I am so excited about our guest, Dr. Tobie Stein, and have been so impressed with your forthrightness. Dr. Stein is Professor Emerita of the Theater Department of Brooklyn College,
Yes.
and you're also a sociologist. But before we get started into why I am so completely impressed with you, I'm going to introduce our Savvy panelistas. I'll start with Colette Ellis, Phyllis Whitethorn, Nomiki McCrillis, and Maria De Longoria. On this episode of Brooklyn Savvy, we're going to be talking about your book, Diversity in the Performing Arts, but we're also going to talk about white fragility. Talk to us about what it means to be white and, I guess, fragile?
Well, first of all, Robin DiAngelo, who wrote White Fragility, also coined the term.
It was very appropriate, but if you can define it for our audience, for those who may not even be familiar with it.
Absolutely. It's the defensive posture that white people take when their power and privilege, their white privilege, is questioned. For example, if I'm in a group setting where the majority of my colleagues are white, and I say, we've got a very, very white staff here, and let's really take a hard look at what we can do to bring a cohort of people of color into the organization, not just one, but a cohort. And I'm met with resistance and defensiveness on, well, we don't know where to find people of color.
Right.
And we've tried doing something like that, but it didn't work out. But that is white fragility, maintaining status quo and defending their power and privilege.
And I think about a meeting that I was at my company, and it talked about why is it that we can't have authentic conversations about race. And I'm at this table with maybe 8 other peers, and no one said anything for the first 3 or 4 minutes. So I said, I guess I've got to say something. But I remember feeling very vulnerable. I remember saying, I just figured, though, I've been here for a very long time, and I'm just going to speak my truth. And my truth was the reason that I don't think we can have authentic discussions in those kinds of structures is because the power dynamic is so out of whack that if you speak your truth, you fear reprisal, or you fear retaliation, or you feel a reprimand. It doesn't necessarily it doesn't mean that it happened to you, but you've seen it happen to others. So therefore, you really are stuck. And even though it seems as though we've moved forward as a country, they want to talk race post-Obama. I'm not seeing that. What do you think, Nomiki?
Well, I think there's a lot of controversy out there with what is really happening and what is theoretically happening, and the bringing together of the two different issues in our reality and seeing it in reality play out, whether it's in education, whether it's in art, whether it's in any type of venue where people are interacting with one another. And so I think there is a bit of a rift. So theoretically it's happening, but in practical actuality, it's a very different forum.
Well, I think also, even if there's been a lot of conversation, there's been a lot of talk, and then we ask, so where has it gotten us? So what we've seen are a lot of people that have gotten into trouble for speaking up, and what we've seen also is that speaking up hasn't gotten many people very far.
What they want, so what they need.
So when you see that, of course, it makes you pause, and it's sort of intimidating.
Right, right. And I think within the context of what you described, there's also that sense of, so I think about it within the context of microaggressions. So if someone says something to me very often there's a lot of attention focused on how I respond to the comment as opposed to the comment itself. So it's, like, oh, well, why are you being so sensitive? That's not what the person meant, right? So the focus is on if I do speak out, if I do call the person on it, it's not about, oh, well, this person said X, Y, and Z. Let's look at that statement versus, oh, well, you responded in a way. Why are you reacting so, angrily?
Back at you.
Angry, right?
Angry,
The angry black woman, right? Yes.
Right.
So that's
angry?
our perspective. But how about from the other side? So you talk about white fragility. So why aren't white people that feel a certain way, we ask that question, speaking up? Why is it that...
You mean those that see?
So why is it that around that table, no one speaks up? Because clearly around that table, it hasn't only been people of color that are around that table, but you said no one spoke up.
But who was around that table?
Well, I mean, they were people that worked for the company.
I mean, of color or?
Oh, no, they weren't of color.
Right.
They
That's
were
the
not
point
of
I'm
color.
making.
I was the
Right.
only one of color around the table, which has been pretty consistent for a long time.
So for me, the question that you asked earlier, you made a statement about, that the progress and that we've we've made some advances. And I really question whether we've really fundamentally made advances or if things evolved, right? Because things happen. And when I say that, people look at me, they're like, well, no, we can vote, we can do this. And I don't mean on that level, right?
Right. You're not
I
talking
mean,
just
because we
structurally.
evolve
Right.
and as population grows and as things modernize, things change, right? And you see that no matter what period that you look at. So if we have changed the way we've done things, is that them really moving ahead? Right? And when I say change how we've done things, so if you change the way you segregate people, if you change the way you marginalize people, if you change the rules and the laws, right, but we're ending up with a similar effect, then have we really made a lot of progress?
Here we are in a city that calls itself progressive, but yet we have the most segregated school system in the country. Lending right to your point around privilege, but something that you shared with me a while back was this isn't a problem that people of color can solve. This is a problem that white people have to solve. Could you kind of elaborate on what you mean when you say something like that?
Well, going back to what everyone here is saying, the power structure is controlled by at the board level, and you're thinking, we can talk about the performing arts industry, but we can also talk about pretty much every industry. That the power structure is on the board level is white, the executive leadership is white, and they're setting the tone and the value system for the organization. So is cultural pluralism or the respect and high regard for cultural difference valued in the workplace and part of every decision that is made in the organization? And the answer to that is no.
right, exactly.
It's not. So if that's not the cultural value of the organization, cultural difference, difference of opinion,
Right. Voices, diversity
different
of
voices, different perspectives, different cultures, then someone who says something different will be put down.
Right, disdained. It's kind of disdainful, yes.
And white people who may feel the same way, that there needs to be a diversity of cultural perspectives, are also afraid to stand up and voice anti-racist solutions. Because when you're shut down, that's a racist behavior, being shut down and not feeling that you can bring your entire self to work for fear you will be harmed, attacked, and psychologically you're harmed and wellness is compromised, which we were talking about earlier in terms of your work.
Right.
So it really has to do with the top of the organization saying, no, no. Cultural pluralism is our core value, and it will be authentic and genuine in every decision that we make. And if it's not, we need to stand up to it.
Are we raising
it out.
children that feel this way, though? Meaning, are we because it starts? I would think a lot of this is starting in the home.
Three years old.
3 years old is when it, yeah.
Yeah.
When a lot of this starts in the home, this idea of being able to be receptive to other cultures, appreciate other cultures, you know, or can we get
And seeing your culture. There was a study done of young children in daycare centers, and already white children were setting themselves apart.
Yeah, we're the ones who set ourselves apart because we hang out together, right?
Right. If we sit together, that's us separating.
Right.
But white children were setting themselves apart because they felt superiority at 3 to 5 years old.
Wow.
So it
Post-racial
is.
society, right?
It's taught. It's taught in the home. It's the teachers in public schools are primarily white, and they, through their conscious and unconscious bias, are segregating the students.
I saw that with the way my children, especially my son, was treated in elementary school. Seemed like whenever there was an issue, somehow or another, he was in it. And it really bugged me because I was in a progressive elementary school, but that's where it started. And I said to myself, gee whiz, Republicans are straight out at you, and a Democrat's going to pretend that they're not, you know, that they're for you, and that's the progressive piece.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, everybody wants what they want for their kid. Doesn't matter. You know, really, these are difficult conversations to have because there's something about them that makes you vulnerable, and it feels unpleasant to have to look at someone, to have to feel these things, and then to have and actually see it expressed through someone.
Right.
Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I do. And I think that that's very interesting what you're saying about young people and thinking about kids, how receptive they are in learned behavior. So acting out, like all the things that we define as, quote, bad behavior is viewed differently according to race. So if we look at, you know, children, so you were saying like with your son, right? He could have just been playing, right?
Right.
Yes.
Now he's a young black boy running around and playing, and it's like, oh wait, he's being aggressive. We have to control him, right? So the lessons, so then all of those things that the kids learn, we take that, then they internalize it.
Many of the respondents of color that I interviewed for my study said they're very uncomfortable bringing their entire selves to work for fear they will confirm the stereotypes their white colleagues already have of them. And that's called stereotype threat, and it's real.
Well,
What
what
about-
about
go
when,
ahead,
I'm sorry, what about when there's the I don't want to say, the good white liberal who thinks they're doing this really good work, right? But in doing this really good work, they then are reinforcing stereotypes. And I'll give you an example. My son went to a public school. He was one of 3, maybe, black children in the grade. I am a single parent. My son is well-adjusted. He has male influences that he is around constantly. He knows who his father is. He has a relationship with his father, right? But he came home from school one day quite upset because there was a new study going on at school. And they pulled any child who they thought, AKA the black kids, who came from single-parent homes and started questioning them about their fathers and why their fathers were absent. And so now my son comes home, and another mother approached me about the same thing, and she was a white mother, but she had a black son. And she was irate, but they made these children feel the opposite of what they really felt because they were well-adjusted, right? Yes. And they were not pining away because there was some kind of different family structure at home. But when they went to school, this liberal behavior of doing this right thing made them, put them in a box, right? Applied a stereotype to them, and then changed their behavior based on their interactions and how they made them feel.
Were you ever told that this was...
No, we found out after the fact.
That should never
That's
happen.
outrageous.
Yeah.
That happened. And the fact that you weren't involved